The women in James Bond movies survive or die. James Bond's romantic encounters are a notable aspect of the movie series, which went way beyond the novels by Ian Fleming. Some of the women that James Bond had romantic or sexual encounters with in the movies survived their involvement with Bond. Some did not. Other women he had encounters with, or that he was involved with in missions, or who chose to help Bond, had similar outcomes. Some survived, some did not. Sometimes Bond just failed to protect them. Hi, this is Dan.
And Tom.
From SpyMovieNavigator.com and our podcast show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Let's analyze how Bond did.
All right, so we're going to look at a lot of the women in the James Bond movies to see where he succeeded and where he failed. And generally, where he failed, the woman died. And we'll total the number of deaths and survivors for each James Bond actor, and then give you the grand total at the end. How many women in the James Bond movies do you think died?
Yeah, all right, let's find out. In many of Bond's missions, some women played an important role in helping Bond accomplish his mission. We can look at this as a weakness of Bond or a genuine strength that he can get the help he needs when he needs it to accomplish his mission. Some were tough and turned on him, or were never won over by him, and some were sexually involved, whether helping him or not. Some survived and others did not. Did Bond really care? Let's dive in and find out.
All right, so that means we're going to start with Dr. No from 1962.
Yeah.
And of course, he has his encounters with Sylvia Trench, who is the first Bond girl introduced in the entire movie series. And she also sets us up for the great introduction of 007 as Bond, James Bond. Bond meets her at a casino in London, and they share a brief romantic encounter before he leaves for Jamaica. She not only survives this encounter, but she returns in From Russia with Love as his love interest. Yep, she's a survivor. And of course, Sylvia Trench was played by Eunice Gayson.
Yeah, Miss Tarot, she's a secretary, but she also works for Dr. No. Bond seduces her as part of his mission to gather information. Their affair ends when he tricks her and has her arrested. But she survived, so there you go. Zena Marshall, of course, played Miss Tarot in that particular case. So,
Well, no,
hey, another survivor.
yeah. Now, did he really seduce her, or was she kind of in a situation where she thought he wasn't going to show up, and she kind of felt like she was obligated to put out?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, I think he seduced her, and when he was saying he has time in the afternoon or whatever in the office there, in the office of the consulate, I believe, and then later, well, we all know what happens there.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me put something on more comfortable. Oh, don't do that for me. All right. That's what he said. All right, Honey Rider. Of course, we have Honey Rider, the main Bond girl. We assume an affair here, and she survives as well. So actually, Bond goes to save her as Dr. No's lair is about to explode. So he's doing a nice thing. We get a glimpse immediately in the first movie that Bond could feel this need to save those who help him. Ursula Andress, of course, played Honey Rider. It was just her birthday recently.
All right, so that's the three from Dr. No.
Yeah,
Let's go
he did
ahead.
okay.
He did all right. Now let's move on to From Russia with Love from 1963. And this is another mission where Bond's women survive. And of course, we start again with Sylvia Trench. She appears at the beginning of the movie, reprising her role from Dr. No. She and Bond share a romantic moment before he's called away on his mission, and a great scene at the picnic at Bond's Bentley.
Yeah, that's nice. I think the romantic moment came a little bit after he hung up the car phone, but yeah.
Oh, that's right. He needed more time before he could come back.
Right, remember that? Yeah, okay.
Now we never do hear from her again, but we assume she survived, and again, still played by Eunice Gayson.
Yeah, of course, we have the main Bond woman, Tatiana Romanova, a Soviet consulate clerk who is manipulated by Spectre into seducing Bond as part of their plot. Bond and Tatiana, or Tanya, developed a romantic relationship during the mission, of course, and remarkably, Tanya survives as well. Played brilliantly by Daniela Bianchi. She was awesome.
I agree. Now, I think we can probably count this next pair, right, which are the Gypsy Girls.
Oh, yeah, they count.
we assume Bond had his way with both of them, and they also seem to survive, and played by Elisa Gurr and Martine Beswick.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many women in the Bond movies, it's easy to forget them. So that's why we're going to go over this now. And we're like, oh, yeah, we're going to remember all these guys. All right, let's go to Goldfinger,
I've got
19.
I've got one that we're going to talk about later, Dan,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure nobody remembers.
All right. All right, let's go to Goldfinger, 1964. All right, now Goldfinger sets the bar for all James Bond movies to come, of course, certainly by Ian Productions. We see the introduction of the Aston Martin, the hot new MI6 issued car loaded with gadgets. We see hot cars and gadgets in the rest of the Bond movies. But we also see some love interests and other women involved with Bond who are not as lucky as the ones in the first two movies. This is the beginning of Bond's failing to protect these women, kind of in his charge, so to speak. In Goldfinger, James Bond has romantic encounters with two women, Jill Masterson. Now, she's Goldfinger's accomplice, of course. As we know, she is helping him cheat at cards at the Fontainebleau. Bond seduces her and convinces her to turn against Goldfinger. Unfortunately, we see Bond's first failure in protecting his women. Jill is killed by Goldfinger's henchman, Oddjob, who covers her in gold paint. This is the first.
But what a memorable scene.
It is a memorable scene. Everybody knows that scene. Of course, it's Margaret Nolan who was on all the posters as the Gold Woman and so on. This is the first in a Bond movie and the first in the series of all the Bond movies where a woman is killed that he failed to protect. Jill was played, of course, by Shirley Eaton.
All right, now her sister, Tilly Masterson,
Yeah.
we don't know that Bond had an affair with her, and Tilly's Jill's sister, but
Mm.
we know that he and she were after Goldfinger and his group to avenge her sister's death.
Yeah.
Bond was there because he was on a mission.
Yeah.
While in the Aston Martin, escaping from Goldfinger's henchmen, he skids to a stop and tells Tilly to run for the woods on his count. And when she does, Oddjob takes his bowler hat and throws it, killing Tilly. There's another
Yeah.
death. So we see Bond run over to her, knowing that he had just gotten her killed.
Yeah.
And you can see some remorse on his face and a decision to make this right by getting Goldfinger and Oddjob.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Tilly Masterson was played by Tanya Mollett.
Yeah. So, I mean, he fails, clearly here, fails to protect her because she's running on his cue. I mean, this is a direct failure. And she dies because of him. Wow. All right. So, Bond, okay, you didn't do too well here.
All right, now there's another woman who we talked about the two, right? We had the sisters. We do have Pussy Galore, and
Yeah.
she's a Goldfinger key ally and leader of an all-female flying circus squadron that helped pull off the job at Fort Knox.
Kind of.
Kind of. And she does work for Goldfinger. Now, Bond does eventually win her over, and she helps him thwart and defuse Goldfinger's plans to radiate the gold in Fort Knox.
Yeah.
Now, Pussy survives with Bond, and we see for the first time at the end Bond and Pussy, who parachuted out of the plane alone, and Bond not wanting to be found so quickly by MI6 or others. He had other plans. And of course,
Yeah.
Pussy Galore was played by Honor Blackman.
Yes.
Now, here's one, and don't forget Benita. She's the dancer in the pre-title sequence that Bond's getting ready to get romantic with when that thug comes out to try to hit him over the head.
Yes.
We assume she survives. We didn't see her die.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good one, Tom. And this is the first time we see Bond use a woman as a shield to protect himself. So he had no problems with that.
We'll see that a few times in the series.
He sees the reflection of the henchman coming at him in her eye. He sees the reflection and bam, he turns around and she gets hit. Okay. All right. Way to go, James. All right. Let's move on to Thunderball 1965. At Shrublands, Patricia Fearing is a nurse who is taking care of James Bond at the rehab facility. We all remember the steam room scene where she is worried Bond will report her to her boss, and Bond says that his silence has a price. Fearing objects at first, but Bond leads her into the steam room where he strips her and they make love, presumably.
I'm not sure I would call that making love, Dan. It really seems to me like he forced her to comply, and it wasn't voluntary.
Yeah, no, that is a general take on this. Yeah, making love. Okay, no, yeah, it'd be more like forcing lust, but
And that was good because YouTube blocks the other word we would normally use here. So yes, I think forcing lust is a good one.
All right, she was played, of course, by Molly Peters, but she survives. Way to go. All right, now we have the main Bond woman here, really, Domino Derval. Well, we all know Domino. She's the sister of a NATO pilot, Francois Derval, and the mistress of the villain, Emilio Largo. Bond meets her in the Bahamas and they develop a romantic relationship as he tries to win her over to his side after the murder of her brother by Largo. Domino ultimately helps Bond in his mission. She not only survives, she saves Bond, becoming the first female in the Bond movie who killed the villain. She's played brilliantly and terrifically and beautifully by Claudine Auger.
And I love the fact that they let her do the killing
Yeah,
because it was a revenge kill for her.
yeah,
And Bond sometimes gets his revenge kills, so that's nice to see.
yeah. She says, "I'm glad he's dead," and he's like, "You're glad," after she shoots him with the crossbow. Whew, yeah,
No, it's not a crossbow. She gets him with a harpoon or something.
yeah, with a harpoon. All right. Now we got Fiona Volpe. She's a Spectre agent who seduces Bond as part of her mission. Their affair is brief and ends with a dramatic confrontation where Fiona is ultimately killed. Now,
Okay, I'm gonna check your words again. You're calling this an affair? I mean, they
okay,
they each did that romantic thing they did to progress their own mission, right? I mean, that was just we're gonna seduce each other because that's what we're supposed to do.
yeah,
This had a very different feeling than most Bond hookups, if you
yeah,
will.
that's true. That's true.
So you have one forced romance in this movie, one in the line of duty romance, and then this one with Fiona. So
Yeah,
James Bond interactions with women were definitely changing in the Bond world, starting with this movie.
yeah, yeah. The great thing here is she never switched to Bond's side, and she stood steadfast against him and with Spectre. So, of course, she was played by Luciana Paluzzi, who we interviewed a little bit ago, couple of months ago. Listen to that one. She was awesome.
She was, and just so it was a really fun interview.
Yeah. All right. Let's give a quick shout out to some of our listeners who just recently gave us feedback on our podcasts. So, a big shout out to Bill Canis and Jim Phelps, who loved our Black Bag No Spoilers review. And again to Bill Canis, who gave us feedback on our 1960s James Bond posters episode, who said, "Hey, really enjoyed the show, learned a few new things too," which is always great. And finally to Mark Perna, who said of our latest hopscotch decoding session, "Excellent work, guys. I really enjoy your podcast." Thanks to all of you guys. We love hearing from our listeners, so keep it coming. All
Well,
right.
and one thing with Mark's comment, he also was talking about how this is like one of his favorite movies,
Yeah,
Hopscotch.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's really nice as we do these non-Bond movies or movies that you may never have heard of before.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who like some of these movies, and so hopefully we're exposing you to some of those.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people have said, "Hey, I went and watched the movie because of your review or your decoding of it." So that's great. All right, moving on. Let's go. You Only Live Twice, 1967. We start off with Ling, a Chinese woman who appears at the beginning of the movie in the pre-title. She's involved in a staged assassination of Bond, which is part of his mission to fake his own death. But they are in bed together and do exchange sexual talk, so we assume they had some kind of affair going on there. A
A
great,
fling, at least.
at least a fling. Yeah, a great pre-title sequence. We assume she survives, and she was played by Tsai Chin.
And Tsai was also in Casino Royale. She was one of the
Yeah.
people they brought back for that movie. She was in the
Yes.
poker game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. That was
All
great.
right, now two other women we need to talk about from this movie. One is Aki,
Oh
and
yeah.
she's a Japanese Secret Service agent who assists Bond in his mission. They
Mhm.
develop a romantic relationship, but tragically, Aki is killed by the Spectre agents in that dramatic poisoning scene. Those
Yeah.
jerks.
Yeah. Of course, they were going after Bond,
Yeah,
but
but they got her.
they got
And
her, and he's in bed with her. So did he fail there? I don't know. He couldn't have known that they were going to do that, maybe. But anyway, she does die.
she does die. And Aki was played by Akiko Wakabayashi. Now, another Japanese woman, Kissy Suzuki, is an
Mm.
agent who helps Bond infiltrate the villain's lair, the volcano. Bond and Kissy pretend to be married as part of their cover, and they share a romantic connection.
Yeah.
Kissy survives as well, even in the novel,
Yeah.
and she's
Yep.
played by Mia Hama.
All right, there you go. On Her Majesty's Secret Service, 1969. Well, this is a lot. Ruby Bartlett is the first one. She is one of the angels of death at Blofeld's Allergy Research Institute. Yeah, Bond, posing as Sir Hilary Bray, has a brief romantic encounter with her. Remember, she writes her room number on his leg at Piz Gloria. We assume she survives, and she was played by Angela Scolar.
Now, one of the things I like about Ruby is she like almost instantly figures out that James Bond, who's trying to pretend that he's gay, isn't gay.
Yeah, right.
She has that sniffed out right away.
Yeah, and he definitely lets her know he's not. All right, Nancy, another one of Blofeld's Angels of Death at the Institute. Bond also has a brief romantic encounter with her, and we think she survives as well. She was played by Catherine Schell, a Hungarian-born British actor, actually. Now we've got, of course, the main Bond woman, Contessa Teresa Tracy Di Vincenzo.
She's the main Bond woman in my
Uh,
mind of the whole
ever,
series. Forget
ever.
Vesper, although she
Yeah,
was she was in the novels, but here, this,
yeah.
yeah.
Obviously, she is the main Bond girl in this movie, certainly, and all. Played terrifically, of course, by Diana Rigg. Bond saves her at Guincho Beach in Portugal in the pre-title sequence of the movie, and they eventually fall in love and get married.
And it's Bond's first real marriage on the big screen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Kissy and You Only Live Twice was a fake or pretend marriage. So
Yeah.
Tracy's his first and only real marriage in the Bond series.
Yeah. And of course, Tracy tragically is killed by Blofeld's henchwoman, Irma Bunt, at the end of the movie. We have visited all of those filming locations in Portugal, with the mansion and the bull ring being some of the highlights, as well as the road where Tracy was killed in the movie. So that was kind of cool. So Tracy is the biggest death of any Bond girl ever in any of the Bond movies.
This Guincho Beach that you mentioned,
Yeah.
where he saves her on the beach, that one's really easy to get to, right? So the mansion and the bull ring aren't as easy to get to.
Yeah, right.
That
Yeah.
beach that scene's done on, that's
Yeah.
really easy to get to.
Absolutely.
I
All
mean,
right, so
first you have to get to Portugal.
yeah, that's the start. All right. You start to get the idea from Goldfinger onward that someone Bond has an encounter with is going to wind up dead. Well, that doesn't always happen, but on Her Majesty's Secret Service, though Bond gets married, is probably one of the most promiscuous outings for Bond, actually, in the movie where he's getting married. Hey, he was pretty racy there. All right. Diamonds Are Forever
Well, my
1971.
understanding is that it got a little racy up in Murin in Switzerland when they were filming too.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Diamonds Are Forever 1971. Tiffany Case, of course. The main one. She's a diamond smuggler who becomes Bond's main love interest in the movie. Bond meets her in Amsterdam and they work together to uncover Blofeld's plot. She is savvy and sharp in the beginning and more of a damsel in distress at the end, but she survives, played, of course, by Jill St. John. Nice.
Right. So now we get Plenty O'Toole.
Mm-hmm.
She's in Las Vegas. She's a casino girl who has that brief romantic encounter with Bond. Unfortunately, her involvement with Bond leads to her being thrown out of a hotel window by thugs and her eventually drowning in a pool. I didn't know there was a pool down there.
Yeah, right.
So this is another Bond casualty. He couldn't
Yeah.
protect her, and she was
Yeah.
played by Alana Wood. So let's jump out of order just to keep the Connery stuff a little together. We had the George stuff in the middle there, but just to keep this together and look at the non-Eon production James Bond movie from 1983, which was Sean Connery's last outing. Of course, I'm talking about Never Say Never Again, the remake of Thunderball.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to include this in our discussion. Normally, we just talk about the Eon production movies, but I love the henchwoman in it. And so, since we're talking about the women here, I think it's a good one. She's kind of a Fiona Volpe character. Of course, I'm talking about Fatima Blush, who is one of my favorite henchpersons in the whole series. I mean,
Wow.
she is a riot. Now, James Bond kills her in what I think is a very fun scene. I mean, if death can be fun, it's pretty fun the way they do this. And she was played by Barbara Carrera. That said, James Bond wasn't her protector or her lover. I don't know if we really should count her for this episode, but I'm going to.
Okay, all right.
Patricia Fearing, that character is back in this version as well. It appears, though, Bond hooks up with her after giving her some foie gras. Remember, he tells the doctor he was up all night as he glances over at her. So we assume she survives. She was played by Prunella G.
And then the lady in the Bahamas is played by Valerie Leone, who we also saw in The Spy Who Loved Me. She's who James Bond is in bed with when Fatima blows up Bond's room. We assume she survived.
She has the prettiest eyes in the series, bar none.
All right, then we got Domino Patacci, his Maximilian Largo's lover. James Bond steals her, and she survives at the end. She was played, of course, by Kim Basinger. Yeah.
Okay, so we said we were going to do some totals, and we've done all of the Sean Connery movies and the one George Lazenby movie.
Yeah.
So in all of his outings, he's had 5 women he was romantic with or protected who died,
Whoop.
and 17 who survived.
Okay.
And that was Sean Connery. George Lazenby's James Bond had 1 die, an important one, and
Yeah.
at least 2 survive.
All right. All right. We got the count going. That brings us to the Roger Moore years. Now, I wanted to say I watched a spy movie called Crossplot that had Roger Moore in it as the lead. So I thought, okay, this is going to be pretty good. This is 1969, so it's before his Bond stint. It's another innocent man getting caught up in espionage, kind of like all the Hitchcock stuff, but nowhere near as good. I think this is as much time as we'll give it.
Yeah, you told me, yeah, we're not going to do cross plot.
No, we're not doing Crossplot. All right, let's move on to Live and Let Die. 1973. Solitaire, of course, played by Jane Seymour. Ha! She's a psychic working for the villain, Dr. Kananga. Bond successfully seduces her, and she eventually helps him in his mission. The bedroom scene is a funny story that Roger tells when they were filming it, but we're not going to tell it right here.
Okay. Well, good thing you mentioned it then. All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, well,
Then we get Gloria Hendry's turn as a Bond woman when she plays Rosie Carver. Rosie's
yeah.
a CIA agent who initially assists Bond, but is later revealed to be working for Kananga. Oh, she's a double agent.
Guy, you
And
got a double agent.
Bond does have a brief romantic encounter with her before she's killed. And this one, too, was a little forced. So, yeah, no surviving for her. And we'll continue what was started with Goldfinger. Someone Bond has an encounter with will die.
Boom. Yes, she did. You got somebody who survived, though.
Well, that's true. And another one, right, was Miss Caruso, played by
Yeah,
Maddie
right.
Smith.
Yeah.
Right. She was the woman Bond was with when M showed up at Bond's place in the scene following the pre-title sequence. Where he's making the
Yes.
coffee and everything, and he's got the
Yeah.
magnet watch.
Yeah. All right. She was the missing Italian agent. Didn't seem like she was missing much with Bondo. All right. All right. The Man with the Golden Gun, 1974.
All right, so we have Saida. She's the belly dancer with the bullet in her navel.
Yeah.
James Bond and Saida start to get romantic when some henchmen come in the room and Bond swallows the bullet. We assume she survives, and Saida was played by Carmen Sautoy.
Yeah. I mean, again, Bond was romantic with her because he wanted to get the bullet. I don't know if there was any other sexual stuff going on there, but
Well, I think he wanted it to go further.
who knows? Yeah. Maybe. All right.
All right, well, what about Mary Goodnight then? She's
Oh.
portrayed by Britt Eklund.
Yeah. Nice.
She's Bond's assistant, and she has a little affair with Bond and survives the events of the movie.
Yeah, that's good. And then we got Andrea Anders, played by Maud Adams, of course, who was the mistress of the villain Francesco Scaramanga. She's also involved with Bond, but unfortunately, as is the trend, she's killed by the villain, Scaramanga. Interestingly, Maud Adams is the only woman in the Bond series to play 2 different leading characters, Andrea Anders in The Man with the Golden Gun and the title character in Octopussy. But did you know Maud Adams is also seen briefly in the background of A View to a Kill's Fisherman's Wharf sequence in San Francisco? So, yeah, there you go. All right, let's move on. The Spy Who Loved Me, 1977.
There's lots of romance in this one.
There's lots of romance, true, but not much really here in terms of deaths. All right, Log Cabin Girl. Okay.
Nice title.
In the pre-title sequence, this is fantastic. She's played by Sue Vonner. She appears briefly at the beginning of the movie in the great pre-title sequence. Bond was definitely involved with her, as we assume she survives, though she works for the enemy. Yeah.
Right. Now, another woman who he gets attached with, if you will, is Felica. She's the woman who receives James Bond when Bond shows up looking for Feckish. She and Bond start kissing when she sees Sandor, and he's got a gun. They spin around, and she gets shot in a scene very similar to the way Fiona Volpe got it in Thunderball.
Yeah.
But I think she actually did the spinning and not Bond, because I don't think he saw Sandor. And
Hmm.
Felica was played by Olga Becerra.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'm not positive who spun who, because I was thinking, man, it's just like him spinning
Well,
Bonita around in Goldfinger. But you
hmm?
might be right. Might have been her, but I don't know why she would. But to protect him, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, Bond always does what he has to do, and if he spun around, hey, that's what he's going to do because he has to save himself. All right.
Next we get Anya Amasova, or Agent Triple X. She's
Mhm.
portrayed by Barbara Bach, and she's a Soviet KGB agent who teams up with Bond. She survives the events of the film and becomes Bond's ally and, of course, romantic interest. So that
Yeah.
worked out.
Yeah, that worked out pretty good. Detente at its best. All righty. Now, we also have Naomi. She's played by Caroline Monroe, who is an assistant to the villain Carl Stromberg. Now, Bond did not really have any romantic interest in her, I don't think, but she is the first woman Bond kills directly in an Ian Productions Bond movie. So she does not survive, and she is killed by Bond during the helicopter chase, if you all remember that. Yeah. And we met her in London and spent a few hours with her a few years ago. That was really cool. She was a great lady.
Caroline Monroe is such a nice lady,
Beautiful. Yeah.
but James Bond is neither her protector nor lover.
No.
But he definitely seems to kind of like interested in her
Yeah, right. She
when he
winks at
first
him in the
meets her.
helicopter. Yes, yeah.
So I don't know. Do we count her for this one or not?
I don't know. We mentioned her.
Okay.
She deserves that. All right.
Okay. Then there's one that this was a little bit of a stretch with Sheikh Hussein's harem girl. And when Bond gets Max Kalba and Fakesh's names from Hussein, he's
Yeah.
offered a girl to spend the night with.
Yeah.
And you don't see the romance at all. You just see that she's kind of like coming on. But it is definitely implied that something's going to happen here because he's going to spend the night with her. But and we
Yeah.
also assume she has survived.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he says.
When one is in Egypt, one should delve deeply into its treasures.
So, yeah.
What did he
I,
mean by that, Dan?
I think they did something. Yeah. All right. Moonraker 1979. Dr. Holly Goodhead, played by Lois Charles, a CIA agent and trained astronaut who teams up with Bond in his mission. Goodhead, one of the most obviously sex-inspired names since Pussy Galore, she survives. So,
What you think Goodhead's a sexually explicit suggestive name?
yeah,
I love that name. It's awesome.
yeah. There's a lot of suggestions in this movie, by Q as well. My God, what is Bond doing? M asks. Oh, I think he's attempting a re-entry, sir. Oh yeah, okay. There we go. Okay, let's move
Again,
on.
what do they mean by that one?
Yeah, never mind. All right.
But if you help Bond, especially if you come from the villain side to help, well, it doesn't always work out so well. We have Corinne Dufour, played by Corinne Claret. She was Drax's personal pilot who helps Bond. Unfortunately, she's killed in a rather dramatic scene as she's chased and then killed by Drax's dogs.
Yeah, that was a scene that a lot of viewers of Bond movies think that was one of the most brutal kind of scenes for a death. Yeah. All right. Then we have
I would not want to go that way.
Yeah. We got Manuela, played by Emily Bolton. She's Bond's contact in Rio de Janeiro. She survives the movie as well, but they never really get romantic, as far as we know, although Bond does try.
I think they do get romantic. I mean,
They do?
remember, he's pulling that blue belt off of her or sash off of her dress that she was
Yeah.
wearing, and then they cut to a parade.
Oh, yeah, in the
I'm
hotel.
pretty
Yeah.
sure I know what they cut away from.
Ooh, wait. You might be right there, Tom. I think you are. All right. All right. Now we have all of Drax's women who were selected by Hugo Drax to repopulate the Earth. We really don't know their fate in the Moonraker space station.
Well,
So
they probably all died because that space station was destroyed.
wasn't doing well at the
No.
end.
And now we can't count them, I don't think, because Bond wasn't romantic with him, nor was he their protector.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's drop them, blow them up. All right.
Just like Bond dropped so many women.
Yeah. For Your Eyes Only, 1981. Melina Havelock, of course, played by Carol Bouquet. Oh, yeah. She was terrific. She is the main Bond girl seeking revenge for her parents' murder. We remember they were killed by the Cuban hitman named Hector Gonzalez, who was hired by Locke to carry out the murder. Melina, after teaming up with Bond, does indeed survive. And in a great last scene For Your Eyes Only. The Havelocks come from the Ian Fleming short story For Your Eyes Only. The rest of the plot, for the most part, Columbo, etc., came from Fleming's short story Risico, and we have a whole episode out on this entitled For Your Eyes Only, How the Story Came to Be. All right, move on.
Oh, actually,
Countess,
before you do, I want to say that of all the Bond women, Domino nails Largo with the harpoon. I
yeah,
love the crossbow thing. I think that's just awesome.
yeah. She looked good with the crossbow too, I have to say. All right. Countess Liesel van Schlaff, played by Cassandra Harris. She is a secondary Bond girl in this movie who has a brief romantic involvement, but she meets her fate as she is killed by the villain. Be careful if you're going to cross paths with Bond in any way at all. Yes, or
Yeah,
cross paths with the villain in a Bond movie.
yeah,
Sometimes you just don't make it.
yeah. Doesn't work out so well. Now,
Nah.
then, of course, we have BB Doll, played by Lynn Holly Johnson. Now, she's a young ice skater who has a crush on Bond, but clearly nothing happens except maybe Bond bought her an ice cream. And
Yeah.
of course, she survives. There was no romantic interlude with her,
No.
try as she might, but he's really her protector.
Yeah. He did a good job there. Let's move on. Octopussy 1983. Well, the Bond women in Octopussy are Octopussy, of course, played by Maud Adams, Magda, played by Christina Wayborn, and Bianca, played by Tina Hudson. So let's see what happens. Bond did a good job with Octopussy as Octopussy survived. Magda, Kamal Khan's henchwoman who appears in many scenes, also survives the raid on the palace. Yay, Bond! And Bianca, who helps Bond out in the pre-title sequence, giving Bond a Colonel Toro ID badge to help him with his disguise and distracting those who captured Bond. We assume she survives as well, but I don't think they were romantically involved. We have
Yeah,
to speed this
there was
up.
nothing that really shows us that they were romantically involved or that he was a protector.
Yeah,
So
no.
this is another one that I don't think we can count.
Lots of others get killed in the movie, but the Bond women or players all survive. What? Hey, how did that happen? Way to go, Bond. All right, A View to a Kill 1985. Kimberly Jones, played by Mary Staven, assists Bond in the pre-title sequence in Siberia in Russia. Bond had retrieved a microchip from the body of a dead MI6 agent, 003. We assume she survives their 5 days to Alaska and beyond. All right.
Well, it looked like they were off on a good start. And it still
Yeah,
amazes me how they filmed her and they set her hair and everything, how much she looked like Farrah Fawcett Majors in that.
she did. All right. Paula Ivanova, played by Fiona Fullerton, was a KGB agent who Bond knew from previous missions. They spent time together in a bubbly jacuzzi, and we assume had some fun together. She later leaves Bond, thinking she has a recorded tape of Zorin talking about his plans to flood Silicon Valley, but Bond is more clever, of course. Anyway, we assume she lives on. So, way to go. All right, now Mayday. Oh,
Well, okay,
Grace
so
Jones.
Mayday, you're saying Mayday.
Yeah,
Two opposite characters, Pola versus Mayday. In
yeah.
terms of Pola just exudes sex, and Mayday, to me at least, doesn't exude sex.
Well, Bond didn't mind. She was a bodyguard and a lover as well of Max Zorin. Well, we know Bond wins her over, and the bomb that was to flood Silicon Valley, she rides out of the mine on tracks and blows up with it, saving the day, but not herself. Bond did try to help, but he could not convince her to jump off at the last minute. All right, now we look at Stacey Sutton, played by Tanya Roberts. She's a real Bond girl in A View to a Kill, and they team up to defeat Zorin. Bond does save her, and she is a help to Bond as well, and she does survive. So there you go.
Okay, so that wraps up the Roger Moore era and all of his outings. And so during his time, he had 6 women he was romantic with or protected who died, and
Oof,
15 who survived.
yikes. Well, it's getting worse. All right, of course, he had more movies. The Living Daylights, 1987, Timothy Dalton's introduction as Bond. He finds himself parachuting onto a yacht in the pre-title sequence, meeting Linda, played by Kel Tyler. She's on board her yacht. They have some fun as Bond on the phone with MI6 says he will complete his report in an hour, or better make that 2. Okay. All right.
I love the way, and we're going to talk about this later too, about how he's always trying to extend how long he's there because He's going to
Yeah.
have a little dalliance.
Yeah. Linda, we never hear from her again, but we assume she survives. Then we got Cara Malovi, played by Mariam Dabo. Oh, Mariam Dabo. Yeah, she looked good in this movie. Who we thought did a solid job as the main Bond girl. And she survives. Bond and Kara go through an awful lot together to resolve all the defection issues of KGB mastermind General Koskov, played by Yaron Krabe, who defected to the West, seemingly, during the concert's intermission that was going on in Austria. Remember, she was a cello player.
Yeah, so there are many fine scenes with both of them as the centerpiece. And Bond does protect her many times,
Yeah.
and she indeed survives. So what's happening with all these women surviving?
I know. What the heck's going on here? We got a new Bond, and boom, all of a sudden they're surviving.
Yeah, in these Timothy Dalton movies, the womanizing is toned down quite a bit,
Yes.
making the movie Bond more like a Fleming written Bond than what we've had in the past. Because in the books, Bond has a relationship with maybe one woman in a book.
Yeah, right, exactly. Ian Fleming even says that in an interview once. All right, License to Kill 1989. Of course, we got Pam Bovier as the main Bond girl, played by Carrie Lowell. She looked awesome in this movie. Pam is a former United States Army pilot and CIA agent. She becomes Bond's ally and love interest throughout the movie. Pam oftentimes helps and saves Bond in this mission to take down the drug lord Franz Sanchez, played, of course, by Robert Davi, who we interviewed. That's a great interview. Listen to that one. Carrie Lowell was terrific in this movie, and she indeed survives the mission and her dealings with Bond. So
Well, and I love there was kind of an adversarial relationship through a lot of this movie between her and Bond.
Yeah.
With her kind of having a little passive aggressiveness, which is totally understandable towards him. And I thought Carrie Lowell played that very well.
Yeah, she was awesome. All right, Lupe Lamora, of course, played by Talisa Soto. Lupe is the love or lust interest of the main antagonist, Ron Sanchez. Bond does get to her in every way. And she assists Bond by providing him with critical information about Sanchez's operations. By the end of the movie, since Sanchez is dead, Lupe is free and is last seen with President Hector Lopez, and she realizes Bond is not going to stick with her, which makes Pam Bouvier very happy. So both women survive here again in the Timothy Dalton Bond movie.
Now, one of the things that happens with Lupe is Sanchez whips her. From everything I've read, Ian Fleming kind of liked that, like in real life. So kind of interesting to see that get tied into the movies.
Okay, I didn't know that one. All right.
Now, Della died, but we didn't count her because she wasn't a lover of James Bond, nor was he her protector. So Timothy Dalton's James Bond has no women end up dead and 4 relationships with women who survived.
Oh, good, Timothy.
So that's Timothy. Not a lot of this whole woman protector or woman dying thing, which is probably good. And we'll move to GoldenEye from 1995.
Yeah. In the 1995 James Bond movie GoldenEye, James Bond interacts with 2 main female characters. Caroline, played by Serena Gordon, is an MI6 psychologist and psychiatric evaluation officer sent to assess Bond's psychological fitness. Oh, that's interesting. She is seduced by him in his Aston Martin while evading Xenia Onatop, who was driving a Ferrari. She is not seen again after this scene, so we really do not know for certain if they engaged in anything more, sexually that is, but she is the first Bond girl in the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies, so there you go.
You're incorrigible, James. And my money is they got together. You're incorrigible, James. It kind of like, okay, I know where this is going.
All right. Next, we got, of course, Natalia Simonova, who's played well by Isabella Scorupco.
She was really good at this. Yeah.
She is. She was terrific. And she looked awesome. Natalia is a Russian computer programmer who becomes Bond's ally and love interest. She plays a critical role in thwarting Alec Trevelyan's plan to use the GoldenEye satellite weapon to cause a massive electromagnetic pulse over London, which would destroy the city's financial records, causing economic chaos and allowing Trevelyan to steal billions of pounds from the Bank of England. Natalia uses her technical skills to thwart the plan. By the end of the movie, she survives and is seen with Bond, of course. Again, détente. Nice.
Okay, so now we have one that I'm not sure can count. Xenia Onatop, played wonderfully by Famke Janssen.
Yeah.
Xenia is a sadistic assassin working for the main villain, Alec Trevelyan. She's known for her lethal methods of putting the squeeze on you, and she attempts to kill Bond several times.
Yes.
Ultimately, she meets her demise during a confrontation with Bond as she's sucked up into a tree for the final squeeze. So she dies. But James Bond didn't have sex with her, although there was a strong element of sexual tension between them, especially in that like sauna world, whatever that was,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
spa
yeah.
kind of scene.
Yeah.
But their encounters are violent rather than romantic, or they're getting off on the violence. It could be that too.
Yeah.
And he isn't her protector, so I'm not sure we can count her in our count either.
No, but she's nice to count. All right. Tomorrow Never Dies, 1997. Again, there are mainly only 3 Bond women in this movie. Paris Carver, played by Terry Hatcher. She was Bond's former lover, who is now married to media mogul and the main villain, Elliot Carver. So, Paris rekindles her romance with Bond when they meet again. Bond's suite that is shown in the movie is the lower level in Stoke Poge's Buckinghamshire, UK. And Tom and I were in that very room. That's, of course, the golf resort that was in Goldfinger. Paris Carver helps Bond infiltrate Carver's headquarters, and sometimes helping Bond has its price, as we know.
Yeah.
She is murdered by Carver's assassin, Dr. Kaufman, as a direct punishment for her betraying her husband. Bond, being the nice guy that he is, later avenges her murder by killing Kaufman. Bond did not protect her, though. That is a failure.
Absolutely.
Wei Lin, played by Michelle Yeoh, is a Chinese secret agent working to stop Carver's plans. She is highly trained in martial arts and espionage and has a great on-screen presence. She was initially working separately from Bond, but she later teams up with him to take down Carver. More détente. There you go. After successfully completing her mission, she and Bond share a romantic moment while stranded at sea. She survives, but mostly on her own merits. She was tough.
She was tough. She was really good.
Yeah.
Now, we can't forget about Professor Bergstrom. You're probably going
Oh,
like,
yeah.
who? All right.
Oh, yeah.
That was the blonde woman Bond is in bed with when Moneypenny calls, interrupting him.
Yeah.
And Moneypenny changes the normal tune here. We've got the new Moneypenny. And when Bond says, I'll be there in an hour, she says, make that 30 minutes. Usually it's the opposite, where he says, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Oh, make that an hour.
Yeah.
So we don't see Professor Bergstrom again.
All right. There you go. We got our new Pierce Brosnan as Bond in a couple of movies.
And we now know that he's a cunning linguist.
And he's a cunning linguist for sure. Careful how we say that. The World is Not Enough, 1999. Dr. Molly Warmflash. Okay, Warmflash. That's not as good a name as Pussy Galore or Goodhead, but okay,
No.
we got a Warmflash. She's played by Serena Scott Thomas, and she's an MI6 doctor responsible for assessing Bond's physical condition after he is injured in an explosion. More evaluations of Bond, which in real life would probably be a normal routine. But she warns Bond that he's unfit for duty due to a shoulder injury. That's not good for Bond, so he must figure out how to get out of that situation. So he seduces her so he can be medically cleared.
That sly devil.
She's not seen again after this scene. So we assume all was good and they all had a good time. All right. Alive, yes. Okay, good.
Now, Electra King, played by the wonderful Sophie Marceau, is the wealthy daughter of a murdered oil tycoon. Initially, she was believed to be a victim, and she's later revealed to be the main antagonist, working with the terrorist Renard.
Yeah.
Sophie is a great Bond villain and a strong female Bond villain.
Yes.
Bond falls for her charms and is intimate with her, but he eventually discovers who she really is.
Yep.
He confronts her and demands she calls off the deadly scheme she's about to initiate. Remember, there was that whole scheme with the nuclear missile.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when she refuses, he kills her by shooting her in cold blood. I mean, point blank kill. To me, this is one of Bond's most deadly and graphic kills, and it demonstrates his ruthlessness and dedication to the mission. So, she's dead.
Yeah, we've got that on our YouTube channel too, and some of Bond's best kills. Wow, that was one of the best kills and deadliest kills and graphic kills. Like, boom. All right, Dr. Christmas Jones, played by Denise Richards. She's a nuclear physicist, as we all know. assisting Bond in stopping Renard's plan to trigger a nuclear meltdown. So she helps Bond defuse the bomb, and she survives. At the end, she and Bond share a romantic time together while celebrating Christmas. Apparently, Christmas can come more than once a year.
Ugh.
That the whole setup with that name and everything. We defended Denise Richards. Everyone blasts her in this movie. Gosh, she wasn't a believable nuclear physicist. We have a whole episode defending her.
Absolutely.
Go listen to that.
All right, so now we have to move to my absolutely least favorite Bond movie,
Your favorite.
Die Another Day from 2002.
Yeah, you got some good women in here, though.
Well, it does. You've got Jinx Johnson, played by Halle Berry.
Yeah.
Jinx is an NSA agent who teams up with Bond. She's tough, and the way she emerges from the ocean with an homage to Ursula Andress and Dr. No is very
Absolutely.
nice.
Yeah.
She survives her mission and her encounters with Bond. And the end scene is a little bit out there with the diamonds and that whole "don't pull it out" dialogue, because it made it sound like they were talking about one thing when they're talking about another. And I don't know, I thought that was a little lame, but the whole movie was to me. But Jinx did a good job, or Halle Berry did a good job here.
Yeah.
And she survived.
Yeah, she did. And then you got Miranda Frost, played by Rosamund Pike. Miranda is an MI6 agent who is revealed to be a double agent working for the antagonist, Gustav Graves. She and Bond do have some fun together, but she dies in the movie during a confrontation with Jinx. And what the heck? She is the enemy, so we don't care about that. So why try to protect her? Whatever. All right, I think that's it for the women in Die Another Day, so we could move on. But
Well, wait. I want to get off this movie as fast as I can, but I think you virtually forgot someone here.
Oh,
We have that scene with Moneypenny, played by Samantha Bond. She was in that scene where she and James Bond were kind of getting it on a desk.
Oh, yeah.
Now, she, of course,
good.
survives because it's Moneypenny.
Yeah.
But the scene was nothing more than a virtual reality joke. So do we count it? I think we do.
She did a great job with that, actually, now that you bring that up. That's good. I think we count it. All right.
All right, so I think we have a total for Pierce Brosnan's Bond of 3 women who died that he had a sexual encounter with or that he protected, and 8 who lived.
Hey, he's got a pretty good ratio there. That's not bad. Okay, by the time we get to Casino Royale 2006, Bond is not doing so well protecting virtually any women. Vesper Lynn being the main one in the movie, of course, played brilliantly by Eva Green. Vesper is an officer of the HM Treasury assigned to manage the funds for Bond's big stakes poker game. She becomes Bond's love interest, but ultimately betrays him. Vesper dies by drowning, choosing to end her life out of guilt for her betrayal, though Bond does his best to save her. He tries, but he's not successful. Vesper seemed to be a real love of Bond's, and she dies. Being the first novel by Fleming, we see immediately how Bond's fate is going to go throughout the series. He often loses, and here he absolutely does.
As does she.
Yeah, in the book, she kills herself as well, but in a different way. So, tough.
The other thing about her is when you say, we think he loved her. I mean, that's the whole, if you look at the whole Daniel Craig arc, it's all about Vesper.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Solange Demetrios.
Yeah.
She's played by the absolutely stunning Katerina Marino.
Yeah.
Solange is the wife of Alex Demetrios, who's an associate of the villain Le Chiffre. And she has a brief romantic encounter with Bond as Bond basically seduces her. But unfortunately, she's killed by Le Chiffre's men as punishment for her husband's failure. And even M says something snarky to Bond when they find Solange gruesomely dead in a hammock.
Yeah,
Quote,
yeah.
I would ask you if you could remain emotionally detached, but that's not your problem, is it, Bond? Unquote.
Yeah, well, hey, he has to do whatever he has to do to get his job done, right? But sometimes he fails even on protecting relatively innocent people. All right, let's look at the last one, Valenka, played by Ivana Milicevic. Valenka is Le Chiffre's girlfriend and accomplice. She attempts to poison Bond during the poker game. As we recall, Valenka is ultimately killed by Mr. White, a member of the secret organization Quantum, so no worries here for Bond. He should not have tried to protect her.
He doesn't really try to protect her, and he doesn't get romantically involved. Let's not count her.
All right, she's out. Quantum of Solace, 2008 then. Let's move on. Camille Montez, played by Olga Kurylenko. Nice. Camille is a Bolivian Secret Service agent seeking revenge for her family's murder, trying to get at General Medrano. who Bond is after as well for his dealings with Dominique Green. She not only survives the mission, she is not seduced by Bond, nor does she sleep with him. This was a refreshing ending in a certain way. This is good. I liked it.
All right, now, if we didn't have this next character, I would have wondered if that scene at the end of Casino Royale with the chair where they rip the bottom out and they have that knotted rope had
Yeah.
left James Bond unable to perform.
I know what you mean.
But they did give us Strawberry Fields in this movie, played by Gemma Arterton.
Yeah.
Fields is an MI6 agent sent to bring Bond back to London. Of course, Bond refuses and becomes sexually involved with her. And Fields is later killed by quantum operatives and left covered in oil as a warning to Bond.
Yeah.
Very much, of course, like Jill Masterson covered in gold paint in Goldfinger. When we spoke to the director of photography for Quantum of Solace, Roberto Schaefer, he describes the filming of this scene in detail. Once again, Bond fails tremendously here. This innocent woman is killed because of James Bond.
Yeah, this is one of his biggest failures because she totally is innocent and did not deserve to be killed in any way. She was just a woman trying to get him back to the office.
Talk about wrong
Yikes.
place at the wrong time.
Yeah. Then we have Corinne Venot, played by Stana Katic. Corinne is a Canadian intelligence operative who appears briefly at the end of the movie. She is targeted by quantum operative Yusef Kabira, but she is saved by Bond, and she survives. So here, Bond allows both Corinne and Yusef to live. Wow.
Yeah, so he ends up protecting her by telling her to get out of there. There's no romance at all in with those two. She was in a movie called A Call to Spy, where she was a spy, and has a much bigger role than she does in this one. And I think she's very good, very talented actress.
Yeah, and there's no romantic involvement here anyway, so she probably should be not. You even talked about it, but here we are talking about it.
Well, but because he protects her. He tells her in that scene,
he does protect
get out of here.
Yep. And he keeps them both alive, actually. So, all right, Skyfall 2012. Severine, played by Berenice Marlowe. Severine is an associate of the movie's antagonist, Raul Silva. Silva's a great villain. She meets Bond in Macau and helps him reach Silva. Now, Severine is the enigmatic and fearful mistress of the villain, Raul Silva. So, she's a former victim of human trafficking and is now under Silva's control. Not good. She hints at her fear of him and hopes that Bond can help her escape.
You know, she and James Bond do have a wonderful interlude in the shower.
Yeah, so we think something happened there. They weren't just cleaning each other, I don't think. Unfortunately, she's killed by Silva in a dramatic scene on Silva's island. Bond is stoic in this scene, basically saying, what a waste of scotch. You remember that scene when shooting the scotch glass off her head?
I would have liked to have drank that scotch.
Yeah. And maybe it was just a ploy that he was being so stoic because Bond does avenge her death by killing Silva later.
Okay, then we get another one here, Dan. Kind of like the Money Penny doing the virtual reality thing. We have to talk about M, played by Judi Dench. Obviously, it's not a romantic thing.
Not a romantic thing, nor is it virtual.
That's correct. Now, she's not a traditional Bond girl, right?
No.
Yet she plays a significant role in this movie.
Yeah.
She's the head of MI6 and Bond's superior. M dies at the end of the movie from injuries sustained during Silva's attack. And this is one of Bond's biggest failures in any Bond movie in the whole series.
Yes.
He does not protect M from getting killed. A huge failure, and it's all on James Bond.
It is all on James Bond because his mission was to protect M. And he's the one who decided to escape to Skyfall with just him and M, knowing that Silva is going to go after them. He had a bad plan. This was a horrible, horrible failure, his biggest ever. In the final scenes, Bond takes a moment to mourn her death before returning to duty, reporting to the new M, Gareth Mallory, played by Ralph Fiennes. But, reflectively, he's thinking that he failed. He knows he failed. This was huge. M's death makes a turning point in Bond's character, reinforcing his personal stakes and his emotional depth. But he did fail here, and big time. Big time.
Absolutely. Now, I mentioned this earlier that there's a woman that you probably don't even remember was in a Bond movie. This woman appears to survive, and Bond definitely has a sexual relationship with her. She's only in about 30 seconds of the movie, and about 20 seconds of that, she's just lying in a dress on the bed next to Bond.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, when you first see her, it's an intense love scene happening. And this scene is just after the explosion happens at MI6 headquarters. They cut to the scene of Bond having sex with this woman, and then he's lying on the bed with a beer. In the credits, she's listed as, quote, Bond's lover, unquote. And she's played by Tonya Sotiropoulou. And you see her twice in that 30 seconds, the last time in a mirror. So she's not in it much, but there's definitely a romantic thing happening there.
All right, that's a good one. She survives.
We assume she survives because, he leaves her sitting there.
All right, that was easy to miss. All right. Spectre, 2015. James Bond is basically involved with 3 women, each with different fates. Estrella is the first one. She's a Mexican agent or maybe just a local contact seen with Bond during the opening Day of the Dead parade and festivities. That sequence, if you recall, that takes place in Mexico City. She is played by Stephanie Sigmund. Bond shares a brief romantic encounter with her in the hotel room. We think it's going to be a steamy scene. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be being set up that way. She really seems to want to get it on.
Yeah, but Bond climbs out of a window, leaving her behind.
And I love that. She's like, where are you going?
Where are you going? He's doing this so he can carry out his mission to get Marco Sciarra. As per old M's wish, who he failed to protect in Skyfall, as we know. She is not seen again after this scene, but we assume she's okay and survives her encounter with Bond. We don't know exactly if they did it before they got to his room or before the parade. We don't know if it was really that or not. We certainly know he didn't go back after he shot at Sciarra. So
yeah, there wasn't much character development there with her.
No.
Now there's a lot more character development with Lucia Sciarra, played by the wonderful Monica Bellucci.
Yes.
She's the widow of Marco Sciarra, the guy who Bond kills in the opening sequence, as per M's video request.
Yeah.
She is associated with the Spectre organization, though her late husband, to be sure, was part of it.
Yes.
She's kind of seemed to be like the wife of, not sure how much involvement she had. Bond seduces her at her villa in Rome. She's supposed to be grieving, right? This is the same day her husband gets buried, right? And he gains information about Spectre before leaving her, and they do share a brief but passionate encounter. Yeah. And then afterwards, she reveals key information about a secret Spectre meeting in Rome. So Bond must have made her happy at that moment.
Yeah. And he does ensure her safety by arranging for Felix Leiter's men to protect her, and she's not seen again, so we assume she survives. But yeah, Bond, you saved another one here. So that was kind of good. That was good.
Yeah, after having a little romantic involvement.
All right, then we got Dr. Madeline Swan. She's the daughter of Mr. White, as we recall, a former Spectre operative. She's a psychologist working at a private clinic when Bond meets her. She really is initially reluctant to work with Bond, though eventually joins him in his mission against Spectre. She falls in love with him. He falls in love with her, at least for now. And as we know, she survives all of this and appears as a key figure in No Time to Die.
And they do have an encounter on a train in Spectre, but at first, he's really just her protector.
Yeah, and she survives, which is good. All right, No Time to Die, 2021. Okay, yeah, we got Madeline Swan in this one. That's what we got. That's the end of it. End of story. I think we're done with this one.
No, there's more. We'll talk more in a minute.
All right, there's not much to talk about in No Time to Die. Really, I've always wanted to say that. All right, Swan is the psychologist, as before, and Bond's love interest from Spectre, of course. Again, remembering, she is the daughter of Mr. White, former Spectre operative. At the beginning of the movie, Bond and Madeline are in a romantic relationship, but Bond believes she has betrayed him. He thinks this a lot with stuff. He leaves her and disappears for 5 years. I thought that was a stretch. Anyway, whatever. When they reunite,
there's a lot that's a stretch in this movie.
Yeah. They reunite. Bond learns that she has a daughter, Mathilde, who is later revealed to be his child as well. Oh my gosh. Really? Okay. Despite
shocking that he would have a child out there in the world.
You'd think they would have made it a boy so he could grow up to be another James Bond, and then boom, bye. But no, they're not that clever.
He might not have done what he did if it was a boy.
Yeah.
As you and I know, there's that daddy-daughter Bond thing.
I get it, Bond thing. Yeah, great. Despite their love, Bond sacrifices himself to stop Lucifer Safin's bioweapon to ensure Madeline and Mathilde's safety. So here, Bond makes the ultimate sacrifice to save his woman and daughter. he gives up his life, we think. Amazon might have different ideas, though.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. All right. Madeline survives with Matilda and drives away, telling her daughter a story about a man named Bond, James Bond. So, of course, there are no other women in this one.
Wait. You have two that I'm not sure I would call protector or lovers, but two important women in this movie are Paloma and Nomi.
Yeah, but they have nothing to do with Bond's love interests and stuff, right?
So I guess we won't count that. So it's only
No.
Madeline and Matilda.
Yeah, but they were terrific in the movie, I have to say. And I hope they bring Paloma back for sure.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they could have played it off if they were smart. They could have had another movie ready to go with Nomi as a 00 agent because she gave back 007 to Bond, teaming up with Bond on future missions. And that would have been cool. She would have been a strong 00 agent and Bond still alive. But no, they screwed it all up.
Well, and
anyway.
I just read something this morning that Tom Cruise may be dating Ana de Armas. So, who played Paloma? So that's kind of interesting. If there's another Mission Impossible movie later, who knows?
Yeah, that would be good.
So this leaves Daniel Craig with 4 women who were lovers or he was protecting who died, and 9 who lived.
Wow. Ooh, his ratio is 50-50. Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's the last of the James Bond movies. Now, in more ways than one, Eon has surrendered all creative rights to Amazon, as we know. So who knows what the heck's going to happen?
Yeah. So Bond, like any real spy, is sometimes successful and sometimes not. So what's the total of all the Bond women who have been killed or not killed, Tom?
In the 26 non-spoof James Bond movies, James Bond had 18 women die with whom he had had a romance or he was a protector of, and 54 who survived.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty good, actually. But so James Bond fails to protect his women. Well, actually, that's 33% of the time. That's 1 out of 3 times. It doesn't sound all that great now when you look at it as statistic. But hey, 2 out of 3 times he succeeds. So we gotta focus on that, I guess. And as Meatloaf sang, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So that's a wrap of our decoding of the women who survived and those who did not in James Bond movies. This has been Dan.
And Tom.
Of SpyMovieNavigator.com and our podcast show, Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Please check out our website and please subscribe to our podcast. That helps us out a lot. Will you do it? Thanks. And thanks for spending time with us.